May you live in interesting times, a blessing or a curse for executive leaders, I wonder these days. Welcome to this episode of Leadership Guest Practices. The age of disruption has been with us for some time now, and challenged further, of course, during the pandemic. Executive leaders have known and unknown challenges to deal with in an ever-changing, unpredictable environment. They need to develop the new knowledge, skills and behaviours to disrupt and fast-track their own developmental journey for the modern workplace, focusing on the how we do things differently rather than the what. That means unlearning some of the old ways and relearning what's most appropriate for now. My guest knows all about this. He advises, mentors and coaches C-suite leaders all around the world. Professor Sattar Bhawani. He is the co-founder of the Disruptive Leadership Institute. He's a leadership development expert and executive coach of over 30 years. He's worked with clients across industries in most regions of the world, and he's just published his book Leadership in Disruptive Times, which will be updated in 2022 with new research from the Disruptive Leader Institute itself. During our discussion, we'll get into some of that new research he's completed and what that means for disruptive leaders in the decade ahead. Hello and welcome to this episode of Leadership Guest Practices. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Professor Sattar Bhawani, someone I have worked with for more than a decade now. Sattar, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. It's my pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to, bantering and sharing, insights with you. And
Well, it's great to have you. And probably for people that don't know you, would you introduce yourself, your expertise, and particularly the Disruptive Leadership Institute that you founded?
Yeah, well, I have over 30 years of international business management and human resource and management consulting, working for organizations, including Hay Group, now part of Korn Ferry, Mercer Human Resource Consulting, DBM Consulting, which is now part of Adecco Worldwide. And now today, I'm still running an organization called the Center for Executive Education based out of Singapore, which is an executive development firm focusing on high potential future leadership, developing future leaders. And since July last year, we have founded together with our partner in the US, iGroup in New York, to establish the Disruptive Leadership Institute. And the Institute is focusing primarily on looking at transforming or developing the next generation of digital disruptive leader to help them to manage the organizational and leadership challenges related to the post-pandemic era. So how do we shift and get the leaders to be ready for the workplace of the future? That has been the focus of the Institute. And what we do is a research-based organization, because iGroup, the other venture partner, is a global information services similar to what Reuters, LexisNexis. So what they do, they offer information to government institutions, research institutions. And what we are doing is to leverage on their capability and develop what we call the research based on disruptive thinking on helping future leaders to be able to be prepared for the future work. So that is all the output, the outcome of their research is then used by our curriculum architect and instructional designer at CEE to develop a host of program globally. So, and that is the focus of DLI, Disruptive Leadership Institute.
Wow, you've been busy since starting that institute, no doubt about that. Wow, I mean, that's so much and so relevant for today. And I know that you've got the soon-to-be revised edition coming out of your book, Leadership in Disruptive Times, and that's coming out in the first half of 2022, is it?
Yeah, it's expected in July. I mean, first half should be before July. We expect that. The research is still ongoing, and it's very interesting finding. I will share with you later. Yeah. So
well, I've had a little bit of a snippet and a look at this, and I thank you for that. And you refer to a lot of this research that's conducted by the Institute that you mentioned, and specifically what to expect post-pandemic, which of course is on everybody's lips, the new normal, hybrid working, you name it. How do we lead in this environment? So, you know, if for our audience, if you could give us some special key messages that you can share now from the research that expose the challenges and opportunities for the decade ahead from a leadership perspective, what would they be?
Yeah, so what is interesting, in 2019, I published the first book, which called the Transforming the Next Generation of Leaders for the Industry 4.0, based on Klaus Schwab from World Economic Forum, talking about the convergence of IoT, iOS, robotic, AI, blockchain technology and so forth. So I was looking at how leaders can integrate that at the workplace, and what are some of the challenges in terms of getting their leadership team and also the employees, to embrace this change. So that was the 2019, and at that time the focus, we were looking at some of the skills, the usual what we call the role of technology-based skill development. You are very into that, Jeremy, in your days in Segos. We talk about VR, AR, and so forth. And some of the skills at that time, we were looking at relational skills, looking at empathy, looking at relationship management, establishing network, and so forth, and listening to employee. And we know that has been all along very important, trust-based partnership. So those are still important, but what we have found in this, because the 2020 book called The Leadership in Disruptive Times was published on 30th July last year. It was during the pandemic. So the first half of 2020, when the Wuhan crisis, when the Wuhan lockdown, the Hubei province, 60 million, Wuhan, 11 million. And the publisher in New York contacted me and, asked me, something big is coming, because the Chinese government never announced, close the whole province of 60 million people, and a city of Hubei of 11 million was astounding. And there's something big. So they encouraged me to look into that, to look at the disruption to business, because as you probably know, Wuhan and also the Hubei province has a lot of global manufacturing facilities for many organizations. But the supply chain disruption at that time, impact was phenomenal. And that means, it affects organizations, businesses, and operations. So I zoom into looking at what happened. And what we have found that, as published in the book, the skills, yes, the 2019 skills, what I mentioned earlier, is important, but we have found that there are other skills. For example, we talk about resilience, and not only just mental resilience. We talk about learning resilience. We talk about learning agility. We talk about results agility, and we are talking about ability to overcome adversity. Yeah. And from 2020 July, when we published the book, I've conducted quite a number of sessions with existing clients globally and some of our partners in the US, EDA, Executive Development Associates, out of Oklahoma. They're Oklahoma-based, but they're global. What we have found, there are distinctive challenges and differences. Number one, whether we like it or not, the hybrid, we talk about virtual. Actually, virtual is not new. It's been around for a long time. And because of the pandemic, now Zoom, becoming what we are using Zoom now, it become something that we cannot live without. But when talking to some of the leaders, the CEOs in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, India, China, in the US, Africa, I do some work in Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, and also we're talking to some of our clients, even in Moscow, Russia. Number one, virtual or hybrid working is here to stay. Now, let's make no mistake. Leaders need to lead and understand the benefits and the challenges of leading in a virtual environment, yeah, or hybrid environment. Number two, this is interesting. In Malaysia, I can give you some example. I cannot mention the name, but in Malaysia, especially the last 6 months, I found a lot of leaders are struggling to role model. No, they talk about, okay, you know, your mental well-being, you know, we are concerned about your psychological impact. How do we provide support? And most large organizations, large MNC have EAP, you know, Employee Assistance Program. It's always there, but never been used. Today, for the last 1 year, let me tell you, almost, I would say 90% of employees are leveraging and using them. And it's found because the state of the mental well-being, employee well-being is phenomenal. And the suicide rate, especially in Malaysia, in Asia, many of cities are increasing. So this is something very worrying, and leaders are struggling also to work. In Singapore, of course, the government is providing support, providing employer grant to provide employee well-being wellness program. Third, what is interesting is that leaders need to be able to no longer to shy away from VUCA, and you have VUCA, you know, the third D, you know. But what is interesting, in 2019, when my book, the Transforming Leaders in the Industry 4.0, we talk about VUCA as being the impact and the importance and so forth because of the digital disruption. Now, today, everybody acknowledged it. Some is too late. Many of the SMEs are gone. Many of them are suffering. Even big, larger SME or MNC are struggling because they never given it very serious thought. Because the shift of the mindset, the mental model, the lack of the mental agility. Today, they acknowledge to me, yes, we know we should have done that. So what does it mean? What we have found, that we're going to talk about this in my 2020 book, the edition is about how do we help leaders to make speedy, thoughtful decision in an environment of the fog of war. I call it the fog of war, you know, when you have the in the VUCA and in ambiguity. How do you communicate trust? Consistently, openly, decisively. And one of the example is a very good, a great leader actually who just passed on recently, the Marriott International CEO, just slipped my mind, but he's a great, he was undergoing, when this thing happened, pandemic happened, he was undergoing chemotherapy for, you know, for cancer, and he appeared live, you know, in a town hall, global town hall, and it has been talked about in many journals about, you know, his ability to empathize, demonstrate authenticity, demonstrate trust-based partnership. Now, our research have shown leaders are trying to do that. They know that's important, but let me tell you, Jeremy, it's not new. What we have, knowing, doing gap. Yes, I know I need to do it, but I'm struggling to do it. How do I shift my leadership style? How do I shift my mental model to the new disruptive leadership competency that we have published? You know, the 6 competency. So that is what we have found. And of course, there are many other things. I wouldn't go to that, but will be published. So talking about getting them ready now for the post-pandemic, it looks like another year. We won't go to the pre-pandemic. The virus is COVID is here to stay. The mutation in my book, the 2020 book, I talk about, and the Chinese government actually found 33 mutation in March 2020. March 2020, 3 months after they declared to WHO the pandemic, they have 33 mutation then. Can you imagine? Now we talk about Delta, Alpha, Lambda. They has been around for a long time. And how do we manage? And this is here to stay. So leaders is going to struggle. So basically, let me just end here. These are some of the nutshell that we're going to publish in the 2022 edition of the book.
You know, so much of that resonates for me. And I agree that those important relational elements like empathy are, you know, have come up that list since 2019. But now, in the face of what's happening, this sort of resilience at leadership level is a very interesting concept, because I think we talk about the mental health of the employees, but I think we should also start to talk about the mental health of our leaders and managers. And are they able to do this? And are they open enough to talk about this, to demonstrate that authenticity, to ask for help, when they need it too? Because as you say, the hybrid is here to stay. We've got to learn how to lead in a virtual world. Leaders have to go through that whole process of unlearning, relearning, quite a lot, and to role model it too. They have to, as you say, right, they aren't doing that enough. They need to walk the talk so that they can role model it. And I think the talking about where they're focused, how I summarize what you said there is really, they should be focusing on the whole of the person as employees now, rather than just the business, their mental health, their physical well-being, their workspaces, workplaces, how they work together. It's a new game. So they have to be mentally agile. They have to be action orientated. And they also might need to, at the same time, be thinking of what's a new business model that's fit for purpose, because we might not be there, right?
Exactly. And you mentioned something interesting. When I launched the book 2020 July in Malaysia, and I, at that time, they still, people are still, what is going to happen? We don't know the impact. Oh, this is like another flu. The problem is they use the word unprecedented. Later in it was the third quarter, fourth quarter, government, business leader, all organizations tend to use the word. What can we do is unprecedented, never happened there. There's no playbook. I think that's not true. It's not true because we know what happened in SARS. We know what happened in Ebola. We hit H1N1 and the bird flu. Bill Gates talked about this in 2015 in his TED Talk. It was very widely publicized. Obama, Bush before that, talk about preparation for such pandemic sure to come. Yet the US government failed. Yet many governments failed. Of course, except Jacinda Ardern, from New Zealand, is one person that I plan to write about as an example of a political leader, a leader who really, I think set the mark and is very successful. And the point you talk about business modeling, Jeremy, this is the problem. When I ask a lot of, it's a big law firm, a regional law firm that I'm an advisor to, I was invited to talk to the board and to the senior partner. No, they told me, okay, Prof, we have this BCP, business continuity. Everybody will have this BCP, business continuity plan, activate war room. They activate the minute the lockdown in Singapore, they call it circuit breaker, they activate that. And my questions to them is, okay, you did follow everything, how to be able to issue data, flow protection, customer protection, safety, blah, blah, blah. Then I asked one last question. I asked, okay, all this is great. You're fighting now, you're doing now. What about the future? What is the recovery path? What are you doing? You need to think critically. All those competency we talk about, resilience, talk about empathy, communication, yes, important. But there's one skill, Jeremy, I've learned, and this is one thing I've for the last 1.5 years, and I've seen few leaders who are very successful. They demonstrate exceptional cognitive readiness. Now, in the book, I explain what is cognitive readiness is ability to combine critical thinking, strategic thinking, creative thinking, emotional resilience, empathy, communication, and connecting the dots, and intuition. People tell me, what intuition? We need facts. In the industry, you talk about big data. We talk about data analysis. Yes, it's important. But there are times that you need to use all these six senses and then you make the decision. So if you ask me, one of the biggest challenge, which I've seen the last 1 year, lack of planning for recovery. They know they need to do that, but what are we going to do? When is the mutation going to end? After Delta, not Delta Plus, now they have new number, and they're going to be much more newer one coming up. According to Newsweek, last month, Newsweek published an article saying the monster of all mutation, there'll be a huge and through research, of course, this is not speculation. So they're not ready for that. That is what I'm worrying. And this is what our institute is working on organizations who are prepared to work now to help them put in place through coaching, mentoring, through training, development, whatever, and to help them to move in the right path.
Well, I love that also as those things that you've seen more positively come out of it for those leaders that demonstrate that cognitive readiness and that agility mentally, that links to what you were talking about before as well, to plan their recovery, plan the next steps. Because it's not just about that. This is where it's planning for what happens when the next pandemic or next crisis or next whatever it is hits, because we've got a lot more to cope with in the world now. Even when you consider climate change and some of the big storms and tragedies that are hitting some countries, how they're going to have to quickly pivot that at governmental level, how it will impact business. So
Absolutely.
There's a huge amount of cognitive residence in a much broader area. And the way I love it, I read a report, I think it's called the Alexander Group in London. And they said, the biggest leadership challenge for the decade ahead is knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. I love that. What do you think of that?
No, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We have to use our critical thinking and expect the next black swan event. And we need to be able to extrapolate. No, I'm not saying that it's 100% accurate. Nobody can be accurately predict, but we can look at patterns. Like you mentioned just now, one of the biggest, I'm very worried about the climate change. Of course, not every country are able to, the pandemic is treated, this inequality. I'm very, even look at the vaccine, it's huge. And a lot of countries are not ready at all. We are very fortunate. UK, US, in Europe, probably France, Germany, most of the advanced economy, even Singapore, planning for the next 30 years, how to manage this climate change and manage the rising sea level. But many people, when I speak to them in Malaysia, even Thailand, Prof, that is long time to come. By then we are gone. By then, I said, don't you want to ensure that your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, at least have a chance to survive? And you cannot leave for future generations. It's our responsibility to take action now. Of course, the priority now is to manage the pandemic and to ensure we survive. Forget about thriving. 90% of our clients are telling me they cannot even survive. They don't know whether by middle next year they'll be around. And there are a lot of consolidations going on. Even MNC banks, even large institutions are struggling. And this is the challenge that we are going to see more and more. You're right. There'll be more disruption, and even you're talking about the multi-generation. The baby boomers are retiring in a large number. For Gen Y are taking up the mid-level. Gen X are senior, they're also retiring in the next 5 years. And you have the Gen Z or the digital natives. And the question is, can organization ready for them? And these are disruption. You're talking about future work. The future of work, you're talking about the gig workers. You're talking about the change of the employment contract. Are you able to do that? A lot of leaders don't understand. They are still dictating, still managing the same way they have been managing for the last 10, 15 years. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work for the future, the next 10, 15 years. It's going to be so different in the workplace.
I love your passion behind this. And we see this together. We look at this in the same way. I know that we do. And may you live in interesting times. Wow, never a true word at this point. I think, we're, as well as these more enlightened leaders, we are in an era of accelerated failure as well. In fact, it's McKinsey, I think their study pointed to by about 2025, 85% of existing senior leadership, executive leaders could fail, which is astonishing. But when I start to listen to some of the things that you're saying, I think I'm not really surprised here, because there are too many leaders that aren't getting to grips with this and aren't kind of ready to admit and shift their mindset around this about themselves. So I know that as well as what we've just been talking about, you are a well-known executive coach. So with that hat on now, Professor Sattar, what is the role of coaching and executive coaching, if you like, in powering up this journey? Because it does need to, just need to accelerate. So it is a blessing and not a curse. What's the secret?
Of course. No, I have to admit, I used to have about 50% executive development and 50% coaching. Of course, the coaching has shifted more than about 80%. And the rest 20%, not training, but board retreat, facilitation of senior management session to get them to talk about all these issues. But how do we help? Now, first and foremost, Jeremy, and this is something just 2 weeks ago, I was in Kuala Lumpur virtually. I was supposed to fly into one of the government link, and there was about the chief of government. Thank God, the previous government wanted to engage me, is now out. So the question was this: I was asked to look at 5 GLC, government linked companies, CEOs, to help them to transform the organization to the post-pandemic. It's a government linked company, and the 5 of them, and they come together. They want to do group coaching, to facilitate. So one of the things I said, look, as I said, self-awareness. I said, first of all, do you think you're the right person? My first question was, do you agree that you are the right person to lead the organization? They look at me, why do you ask me that? I said, do you think you have what it takes? And are you committed to take this organization or continue the job? Of course, because in a group setting, they're very careful, but privately, then they call me up, and the 2 of them told me, actually, I'm start looking at this is not what I've signed up for. They never expect this. Now, why I'm sharing this is that not all leaders can be coached. They are what we call coachability, the ability to embrace and accept that change, and whether they are willing to be able to embark on the journey of self-discovery. Yeah. And first thing I do is to make them understand where, 3 questions I ask them. Where are we today? So then ask them, where are you today in terms of the pandemic, looking what the challenge economically, and they look at government, of course, there are the macro factors and the micro in organization. So where do you want to go in the post-pandemic? Again, a lot of questions need to think. And some of them say, I don't know. A lot of things are unknown. The government, Malaysia is facing a lot of, we are 23,000, 22,000 each day, new cases. I say, okay, but you need to think. You can hypothesize. Where do you need to go? The next question is, of course, where I come in, how do you get there? That is coaching. So they know, because most of them have access to information. They know what is going on. They know what potentially would happen if they don't take action. So it's a knowing, doing gap. So the gap is the capability to be able to execute. So this is the challenge they have. So coaching, I'm doing strictly executive, C-suite executive coaching. In other words, CEO and C-1 or N-1. And also for the board, and the sponsor is normally the board. And what we do is to help them to understand where they are, how they feel, how they think, and to see whether they mesh or do not mesh with the current situation. So it's about self-awareness. So are they prepared? If they're not prepared, there are 3 occasions where I said, no, I do not want to accept, because although the person, the CEO, wants to continue because he knows that he'll give another job. So he said, look, I will continue. Said, no, it's not fair to the organization. It's not fair to yourself. You need to decide, are you prepared to do this? Commitment. Third, in the coaching helps them, most of these leaders, to prepare for the post-pandemic. It helps them to understand that we cannot control the destiny. We do not know the future. We do not know. We can only control our action. We have to work on what we know, what we can do, and to be in control. So we cannot control the destiny, but we can control the probabilities. We can control the action leading up to the outcome. And this is where coaching helps them to capture the diverse opportunities. And we look at, each and every day. So every single day, they have to spend about 15 minutes. I ask them, reflect for yourself, time for yourself. No more, no, those days, end of the week, self-reflection, what have I done for the week? No. This is done every day, even on a weekend. What are you, 15 minutes for you to reflect? Mindfulness is very important. So I advise them to practice mindfulness, focus, no disruption, and help them. And each coaching is different. Some leaders, they have the strength, they have the capability, but they need to be polished. And I always use this word, diamond brilliant. Diamond? My wife always like to, Nora will like joke, because I like, diamond, women love diamonds. So when you talk about diamond, different color of diamond, the blue, pink, whatever. So you need to polish. Some I don't need to polish, I just need to brush. They are brilliant and they are great. But in the pandemic, in current disruption, many of them are still very need much more polishing, need much more help. But I am glad that at least 10 people last November that I coached for 6 months has now successfully, in terms of putting in plan. So coaching help, but they have to accept. And lastly, what is important in coaching is not one size fits all. It's a highly individual. Is the highest individualized form of executive development, where it's one-on-one, confidential. We do not reveal to the sponsor unless on 3 instances. It's a threat to life, threat to himself, or there's a breach of statutory duty, or if there's a crime about to be, so those kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's strictly confidential. And I think it is something not for everyone. I have to admit, not everyone can do that. And also the cost investment for C-suite. Of course, there are lower level coaches who does for managers. They do for what we call workplace coaching, for lifestyle coaching. To help. There are many. So they are different. I'm talking about C-suite executive coaching for CEOs and the direct report. And there's gaining more recognition. They acknowledge, yes, we need it. But question is financially. Not all organizations. So it is about building the business case, working with them to build this for the board to approve. So,
right, and as a summary for me, I've written down things. I've written what you said here in capitals. That's how important I think this what you just said was. It's like this knowing and doing gap. That resonates with me. And then tailoring the coaching approach, the importance of which is, some of the things that you're entering that coaching with, don't try and control the uncontrollable. Focus on what we can do. That towards a clear outcome, rather than trying to influence these things that are out of our control. But I think one of the most important things that a coach can do, that you're saying towards the end there, is help those C-suites, the C-1, N-1, etc., understand the importance of time to reflect, time for mindfulness, time for themselves as well as for others, because it's tough. It's tough for leaders out there. We talk about employees a lot, but it is also tough for leaders out there. And they do need that time. They need to be prepared. They need to be resilient. They need to power up their reserves at times as well. And taking that time out is really clear. So if we take everything that you said, which is there's so much good stuff here. If I'm an executive leader, if I'm a kind of a CEO, I'm thinking, you know what, this really resonates for me, and I really want to do something about it. What would be your sort of 3 quick tips to fast track progress for those leaders who are committed to this journey and heard what you said, Sattar, say, you know what, it's absolutely right, I'm going to do something different?
I think that's excellent question. What can we do? 3, I will give you 4, because I always believe the rule of 3 or 4. Let me tell you, first thing, I think we need to be able to accept, as I mentioned earlier, that we cannot have control. We cannot control the pandemic, but we can control the outcome. We can do our best to look at the probabilities. So number 1, we need to accept the reality that we may not have full control in many things, is what's happening right now in the pandemic. So what do we do then? We need to have the self-awareness. Our strength. We need to know our limitation. And how to overcome that. Number 1 is to develop what I call in my book, I talk about the LEAP, L-E-A-P, leaping through the pandemic. LEAP, L stands for liberal thinking. The liberal thinking here basically means disruptive thinking, looking at your mental agility, challenge the status quo, and do not fall back on what has happened in the past, because there are a lot of things may not work. So you need to really challenge your mental model. That's called liberal thinking. Second is what I call agility. It's related, but it's different. Agility here is how do I then to be able to develop a trust with an employee. Agility in two aspects. One is the mental agility we talk about. The other agility is change agility, to transform at the workplace, and agility from the perspective of the people, flexibility, empowerment. We all know that, but this time around, because we have the virtual hybrid working, you need to let go a lot of things that you worked in the past and how you communicate. And agility also involved in terms of the results. So you need to be flexible, maneuver. They may not be straight path, and you need to reinvent. I use the word reinvent. You used to talk about strategy, 3 year, 5 years. No, it's a daily basis. I'm sorry. I was talking this, giving a presentation about a month ago. I said I think it was CEOs. You need to reinvent your mind every day to look at what are the possibilities with all the policies, government, with all the competitors. So reinvent means that you have to have the agility and looking at results and be able to change. Thirdly, you need to be able to develop what we call trust-based partnership. Now, especially in today's context, you cannot do it alone. You need to work with your competitors. You need to work with industry partners. Leverage on the government, whatever support schemes. You need to be able also to work with your organizations such as the Chamber of Commerce, chambers, organizations that you can network and learn from others. Be humble, learn from other CEOs. And that is the trust-based partnership. And lastly, so L, actually, I didn't go in the order of the thing. The last one is called the exuberant thinking. Exuberant, although with all the depressed news, your employee, your board must see you as enthusiastic, as a sense of optimism. So when I say optimism, you must be grounded to reality. You don't give a false sense of, you need to be energized. You need to have energy. You need to energize, but at the same time be grounded, knowing what are the limitations, and be upfront with the employees so they know that you are being authentic. So if I were to summarize, she's LEAP, because in my mind, it's in the book. L stands for, as I mentioned just now, liberal thinking. E for exuberant, being exuberant, being optimistic, but grounded to reality. Then LEA is for agility, I'm talking about mental results, agility, change agility. And P is for partnership, trust-based partnership with your employee, with your board, with your stakeholders, suppliers, customers, of course, customers first. Customer always number one. Customers first. Actually, sorry, people first. I only believe take care of your employee and they will take care of the customers. And lastly, partnership with your competitors, see whether you can leverage on research, on industry practices, and so forth. So LEAP, leaping through the fog of the pandemic, the disruption by the pandemic. And in the 2020 book, I explain in very detail how do you do that.
That's absolutely great. And that all starts, that leaping starts with acceptance. It always starts with mindset, doesn't it? An attitude, so that they can move through it. It's been a fascinating discussion with you, Prof. And I really can't wait for the revised edition of the book to come out next year. You've got to keep us posted. I'm sure many people listening and watching this would like to get in touch with you, know more, find out more about you as an executive coach, you as a disruptive leader expert. So how do they get in touch and find out more? Satar?
Yeah, the easiest way is, of course, for the website has a lot of information. You can see at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, Disruptive Leadership Institute. That's where you have all the links to the books, the articles, and what I've done for my client, and I make it available publicly. Every chapter of the book, I condense it into an article published in the Human Resource Journal internationally, Human Resource Online. So you can have a link and you can download free. I have white papers that I'm giving away free. I'm also, all my interviews, all the webinar masterclass with the permission of the client. I ask permission. I make it available to the DLI YouTube website, and the links to all the social media is found on the easier place to go to the DLI Disruptive Leadership Institute. All the social media icon is there. You can go in and connect me on LinkedIn, my personal and DLI LinkedIn, where I publish every week a new update and on the pandemic leadership challenges, and also discussion about what are some of the best practices that leaders and organizations can consider to adopt. Because I'm a member of many of the various professional grouping in terms of looking at the post-pandemic with WHO. I'm in touch with WHO, in touch with CDC in the US, because part of research is to access some of this published data. So I publish them. So when publishing means that, in the LinkedIn, in the Facebook, in the Twitter, I use more LinkedIn than anything else, because that's where I reach a wider network. So they can contact me through there, and my email address or LinkedIn is all available there. And I would love to continue the dialogue and share the experience.
Well, thank you so much. You're a good friend, you're a colleague, you're an amazing mentor to me, Satar, and it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for joining me, and goodbye.
I must say, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it as always, Jeremy. I mean, we enjoy working together, and I'm sure the audience, and you have done this series that you have launched. I went through many of the videos and I've shared with some of my clients. I think you're doing a great service for the community. This is a great way to share, and this is what we should be doing, sharing our knowledge. So with that note, thank you so much, and I look forward to catching up with you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining our Guest Practices videocast. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel through the link below, or check out our website to access more in our current series of expert interviews.